I was directed by a guy that directed Never Watched My Acting. He said, Marty, that was 2 seconds too fast. He could have cared less about the acting I was doing. So George is a very warm, giving, he's a nurturing director. I know we're out there killing zombies, and, you know, but I mean, even in the pie fight scene, and the scenes that are just, would be throwaway in any other film, he really thinks about that. You know,
Knight Riders.
Or not, well, when we did Knight Riders, you know, that was really another example of working with George. I mean, the relationships in that movie are unbelievable.
George is also very kind. You want to do things.
You want to give him your best.
He's also incredible at mimicking people. He's a great mind. He's like, someone comes in a room, and like 10 minutes later, he's got their moves down. He can do their voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just really funny, because once you're out of the room, you don't know what he's doing there about you, because he gets the emotions down. And then he'll go into these riffs. He'll do like 6 or 7 different people that were in the film and do their voices and do their motions. It's really amazing to watch him do that.
He's very generous and very collaborative. You know, and that's why people want to work with him, because he's so generous.
I mean, as a crew person, for years, working with George on a bunch of different films, you never felt like you worked for George. You felt like you worked with George. And I think he gave all the actors, all the crew, everybody that feeling. It wasn't like he was the boss. He was the person who knew the most about what was happening. But you never felt like you were working for him. You always felt like you were working with him. That made a big difference.
You don't find, when you find a lot of differences in many directors in Hollywood or in the film industry. And some of them create tension on the set for a reason, because they want the actors to be stressed or
Friedkin
fear.
was firing guns on his head. Friedkin was firing guns on his
Oh,
head.
right, exactly.
Joel shooting.
That's right. Donner was the same way. He was very stern taskmaster. John Ford. You can go down the line.
Oliver Stone would tell you you're terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever acted before?
No, Hitchcock's another one, you know? Get them off the set. And then there were guys like George, who just were very mellow, very nice to work with, never shook the crew up.
Never talked louder than that.
He was never loud, very gentle, and kind of said, okay, let's try this. Let's go with it. Hey, let's do this. Say that something. And that's, yeah, some directors are like that. But George was unique coming out of Pittsburgh, being independent, and then later trying to tackle the Hollywood scene and that kind of thing. And I'm not quite sure if that's, you know, if that didn't hurt George.
Well,
you know,
yeah, well, Dawn was the last of that. I see Dawn of the Dead as being the last of his guerrilla filmmaking experience.
Right.
Because from that point on, he had to answer the studios and distributors and all these other things that were foreign to him.
And they stifled some of his...
I think they stifled his creativity.
Even on Day, Day was pretty,
Day was a...
Day wasn't too bad.
there wasn't a lot of good.
It wasn't bad, but it would have been much better if it was all George, believe me. I know on Monkey Shine, George would decide we were going to do something.
Right.
But there were 3 boomers standing behind him going, like that. And just to have somebody looking over his shoulder, just...
Questions about that? Go ahead.
All right, I've got one that I've been thinking about being here over the weekend. In a lot of George's films, in most of George's films, he seems to have a fascination with the media and how it affects society at large. And yet, looking here over the weekend, I'm looking at how his film, how Dawn and how Night and everything have affected society itself. And what do you think about the irony of how much impact this has really had on society itself? I mean, you see, you know, stereo commercials where you've got zombies walking in with you know, up to get appliances, things like that. Right.
It has always surprised me the number of times you will see references. It's like, really?
Everywhere. Right? Television, radio, print, and the fact of the matter is that you're buying stuff from overseas. It's costing you $350 per package that's worldwide, you know, and it's made a great impact, you know, and it is surprising, you know.
I'm not so sure George used it as much as a commentary as a device, more as a device to build tension and move the story along.
George's roots were in commercials. They did commercials
Yeah,
anymore.
and he knows how to manipulate that medium to make it work within his films. And I think one of the great parts in Dawn actually is when there's no more TV. When there's just white noise and static. I think we all, you know, when you watch that, you get a sort of a feeling of loss and a feeling of being alone, you know. Whereas without TV, then you know, that's sort of our lifeline.
And also the fact that Stephen is reluctant to turn it off, even though there is nothing on.
There's nothing there. Something will come back. Right. Yeah. So it's pretty neat how he used that device.
Any other questions? All right, Dennis?
My question is about the props and the wardrobe pieces from Dawn of the Dead. They are very difficult to come by for the average collector. I was wondering if any of you got to keep any souvenirs, props or wardrobe pieces from the movie?
Ken, I sold your coveralls to Greg Nicotero.
Oh, you did?
Where's his cut?
I got him even, but yeah, he bought him for his collection.
You know,
K&B.
I have the leather bomber jacket. I still have that suit.
I have my leather jacket. You know, the thing is, though,
I have the sword.
we sort of wardrobed ourselves, and we were, you know, we brought in our own clothes, we brought in our own props. You know, the phone things like the sledgehammer, you know, was made, but many of the things, you know, even down to the sunglasses and things were brought in by ourselves. So, you know, you have 600 zombies. Yeah, your switchblade comb. You have hundreds of zombies that just wardrobe themselves, basically, and that's the props are probably either thrown away or in a basement somewhere.
Most of them were in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
You know, so anyone who lived in Pittsburgh or was still with George or around George at the time, they had the availability of those props. Personally, you know, I wore a bomber jacket, the jumpsuit, and the hat, and the rifle. You know, that's basically it. And there was nothing for me to take. I wouldn't think I took the gun back.
For the whole movie, didn't you like dress up 8 more times?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
For the inside, but I don't think. I had some. I think it was my own.
Your own stuff.
It was my own stuff.
Yeah.
It was my own stuff. So basically,
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
The dress up was mine.
yeah.
Hey, Dennis, there's a prop that you might be interested in. You know when Ken's on the roof and he's hitting tennis balls?
Yeah.
And the ball bounces off the roof, Wendy, I think you said you threw it down.
I did, sir.
The ball bounces near a corpse, a skeletal cadaver.
Yep.
That was something I borrowed from a costume company decorated, and the coroner, when he saw that in the window of the store, shut the place down, saying it was a real body, and she has to bury it or cremate it.
Right.
It's buried in a Mount Lebanon cemetery right now. It's a prop. It's a prop. You know what? If there's another anniversary for this movie, we should have it
Dig it up.
Zoom.
Right.
Right, put it on display. You know?
Big premiere in New York at the Rivoli, I guess. Did you guys attend that? And what was any recollections of?
Somebody running out of the theater to throw up.
People were, the first 10 minutes of the movie made people sick.
Yeah, my grandmother came, she wanted to go, and I asked her not to go. And I told her, I don't think you need to go see this movie. And she insisted on going. And then, the first 10 minutes, politely excused herself. I was relieved that.
You know what's really interesting about this? I remember, I was like sort of catching up with my memories last night. I was, after the second panel, I was thinking, you know, I remember the premiere really distinctly.
When we in New York?
Went to what? No, we were in Pittsburgh premiere. And I remember, I mean, a lot of us were there and the place was packed. And about 15 minutes of the movie, I thought, oh God, it was violent, but I liked the movie. And I thought, no wonder it's not rated. And then when I left, I thought, I wonder if people were going to get to watch it because it was so violent.
Yeah.
And I remember telling people, they were saying, oh, I heard you worked on a movie. They didn't know which one. Dawn of the Dead. This was like within days of that. And they said, oh, that movie. It's so violent. It's so disgusting. Why would they make things like, I was getting all this sort of negative feedback from people that were, you know, older adults to me at that point. And I was starting to wonder, is anyone ever going to get to see it? I mean, now that I think about it, it's very successful now, obviously, 22 years later, but at that week, those couple of weeks right there, I was really wondering if it was ever going to get distributed.